My name is Rose. I am 42 years old, a senior lecturer in business administration, living in a quiet suburb just outside Willow Creek, Colorado. For 17 years, I was married to the same man, and until one single notification lit up his phone, I believed my marriage was unbreakable. Let that sink in. I was not young. I was not naive. I taught negotiation, ethics, and organizational behavior for a living. I stood in front of graduate students every semester and explained how power shifts, how deception works, how people protect their self-interest at all costs. And still, I did not see it coming. Or maybe I did. I just refused to believe it. From the outside, Lucas and I looked perfect. That word again. Perfect. A 2-story house with pale gray siding, trimmed hedges, a kitchen remodeled exactly 3 years ago, 2 stable careers, no public scandals, no loud fights, annual vacations scheduled like clockwork. People admired us. Some envied us. What they did not see were the micro fractures, the way he stopped asking about my day, the way his phone never left his hand, the way his shirts came home smelling unfamiliar. Not perfume exactly, something softer, warmer, younger. I told myself it was stress. I told myself it was partnership fatigue. I told myself that long marriages went quiet sometimes. I was wrong. That night, Lucas was in the shower. The water ran steady and loud, filling the bathroom with steam. His phone lay on the nightstand, face up, careless. That alone should have told me everything. I had never checked his phone before. Not once in 17 years. Trust was my religion. Privacy was sacred. Then the screen lit up. One short vibration. One soft sound. I remember standing up slowly, as if my body already knew something my mind had not caught up to yet. The notification was clean, polite, efficient. Reservation confirmed. Table for 2. Lumière. Friday at 7:30. Window seat as requested. She will love it. I did not breathe. Lumière was not just a restaurant. It was a symbol, the kind of place people saved for anniversaries, proposals, final celebrations. Lucas and I had talked about going there for our 10th anniversary. We canceled. He had said he was flying out for work. Apparently, he had just chosen someone else to take my place. I unlocked the phone. The passcode was still our wedding date. That detail hurt more than anything else. Messages poured out. Photos, voice notes, calendar entries. Entire conversations stitched together with intimacy and routine. A year's worth of betrayal hiding in plain sight. Her name was Sophie. Young, blonde, confident in the way women are when they believe they are winning something that belongs to someone else. She worked in communications at the law firm where Lucas was a partner. They did not just sleep together. That would have been easier. They shared jokes, rituals, morning coffee texts, complaints about their spouses. He sent her photos I had never seen him smile in. I stood there while my world quietly rearranged itself. No screaming, no shaking hands, just a sharp, metallic calm settling into my chest. Have you seen my blue tie? Lucas called from the bathroom, his voice casual, comfortable, unafraid. Second drawer, I replied. My voice did not crack. That was the moment something inside me closed. I did not confront him. I did not cry that night. I lay beside him, my back turned, listening to his breathing. I realized then that betrayal does not always arrive like a storm. Sometimes it slips in softly and waits for you to notice. The next morning, I kissed him goodbye like always. Good luck with the Japanese clients, I said. He smiled. He always smiled when he thought he was safe. After the door closed, I sat alone at the kitchen table and stared at my coffee until it went cold. I did not take time off to grieve. I took time off to prepare. Because if Lucas thought this story would end with a confrontation in our kitchen, he had underestimated me in the most fatal way possible. I did not want an argument. I wanted clarity. And if he had planned a perfect night for Sophie, then I would give him one, just not the ending he expected. I did not rush. That was the first thing I learned after betrayal. Speed belongs to emotion. Control belongs to patience. I requested 3 days of leave from the university. I did not explain why. I did not cry to my colleagues. I did not tell a single friend. Silence became my armor. The morning after I found the messages, Lucas left for work like nothing had changed. He kissed my cheek, grabbed his briefcase, and complained about traffic. I watched him walk out the door and realized something unsettling. He was not nervous. He was not afraid. He believed I was still blind. I sat at the kitchen table with his phone in my hands, and began to read everything again, slowly this time. Carefully, patterns emerged. This was not an accident. This was a system. The affair had started almost a year earlier, disguised as late meetings and conference calls. Sophie had a rhythm. Morning messages, midday check-ins, nighttime photos sent after I had gone to bed. Lucas had built a second life while standing inside our first one. There were trips he told me were work-related. Santa Fe, Scottsdale, Chicago. In the photos, Sophie was always close. His arm around her waist, her head on his shoulder. His smile wide and unguarded. That smile did not belong to me anymore. I did not throw the phone. I did not scream. I made notes. Dates, locations, credit card charges, emails forwarded to personal accounts, company expense reports that did not align with reality. As a business lecturer, I taught risk management. What Lucas had done was reckless. Affairs leave trails. Digital ones leave evidence. By noon, I knew something else. Sophie was married. Her name appeared repeatedly in Lucas's calendar, alongside a different last name. That detail stopped me cold. I searched the firm directory. Sophie Walker, internal communications. Then I searched public records. Ethan Walker, executive architect, Denver-based, married 5 years. His social media was painfully ordinary. Photos of buildings, coffee mugs, a dog. A wedding anniversary post from last year praising his wife for always believing in him. I closed the laptop and leaned back in my chair. This was no longer just about me. I considered my options. There were many. None of them involved screaming. None involved confrontation in my living room. If I exposed Lucas privately, he would beg. If I exposed him publicly, he would deny. I needed precision. That afternoon, I opened my university email and did what I had done hundreds of times before. I drafted an invitation. Formal, polite, academic. I invited Ethan Walker to speak at a seminar on sustainable urban design. I complimented his work. I referenced his recent project downtown. I sounded like myself. Professional, measured, trustworthy. Then I added one final line. I would love to discuss details over dinner this Friday at Lumiere at 7:30. I stared at the screen before hitting send. This was the moment where everything became irreversible. He replied within 2 hours. He was honored. He was available. He looked forward to meeting me. I closed my laptop and sat very still. Lucas came home that evening late. He said he had been buried in meetings. He ate dinner without tasting it. His phone stayed face down. I watched him and felt nothing. The next step was logistical. I called Lumiere directly. My voice did not shake. Yes, a reservation for 2. Window seating if possible. Pause. And if there is a table near the reservation under Hamilton, I would appreciate that. We are discussing a potential partnership. The hostess did not hesitate. Of course, ma'am. I hung up and let out a slow breath. Every piece was now in place. On Friday afternoon, Lucas dressed carefully. Gray blazer, crisp shirt, the one I had pressed that morning. He kissed me goodbye and told me not to wait up. I smiled. I arrived at Lumiere 20 minutes early. I wore a teal silk dress Lucas once said was too bold for dinner. My hair was pulled back neatly. My posture was straight. I did not dress to impress anyone. I dressed to remind myself who I was. The restaurant glowed with candlelight and quiet luxury, soft music, low voices, crystal glasses catching the light. The waiter seated me exactly where I had requested. I ordered a martini and took one slow sip. When Ethan arrived, he looked nervous but polite. He shook my hand firmly. He smiled easily. There was nothing theatrical about him. We talked about architecture, about teaching, about work that mattered. Then Lucas walked in. He did not see me at first. Sophie did. Her hand froze mid-gesture. Her smile faltered. Lucas followed her gaze. His face drained of color. For a brief second, I saw panic. Raw and unfiltered. I held his eyes. Calm, unblinking. Then I turned back to Ethan and continued the conversation as if nothing had happened. That was the cruelest part. Lucas and Sophie were seated at the window, exactly where he had planned, exactly where he believed he would be safe. I watched him pour wine. I watched him touch her wrist. I watched the performance unravel. At the right moment, I stood. I need to excuse myself, I said softly. In the hallway, Sophie confronted me first. Brianna, she whispered. Yes, I replied. She looked terrified. So are you, I said quietly. The difference is I planned for this. I turned and walked back toward the dining room. Lucas was already standing. I called Ethan's name. He looked up, confused. I introduced everyone. The truth did the rest. I did not raise my voice. I did not explain. I let the silence work. When I returned to my seat, Ethan was still standing. His face had changed. Permanently, I signaled the waiter. "We will need a private room," I said. "This conversation is not finished." The private room was smaller than the dining hall, but heavier in every possible way. Soft lighting, thick curtains, a round table set for 4. It felt less like a restaurant and more like an interrogation chamber disguised as luxury. I sat down first. Ethan took the chair beside me without asking. His hands rested flat on the table, knuckles pale. He had not spoken since I introduced everyone. Silence had hollowed him out. Lucas and Sophie sat across from us. They looked like students caught cheating on a final exam they thought no one would ever grade. No one touched the menus. No one reached for water. The door closed behind the waiter with a soft click, sealing us inside. Lucas cleared his throat. "Brianna, I can explain," he said. I raised one finger. "No," I replied. "You can listen." He froze. I leaned back slightly and folded my hands. I had spent years teaching executives how to read a room. This one was mine. "You received a reservation confirmation 3 nights ago," I said calmly. "Friday at 7:30. Window seat. Wine pre-selected. You used the company card again, Lucas?" "That was careless." Sophie looked up sharply. I continued, "You booked the Santa Fe Hotel under a work conference that never existed. You charged meals for 2 and listed them as client entertainment. You forwarded internal emails to a private account." Lucas's face collapsed inward, like a structure failing at the foundation. "I did not come here to hear apologies," I said. "I came here to end a pattern." Sophie started to cry. The sound was small, desperate. Ethan finally spoke. "How long?" he asked her. She shook her head, tears slipping down her cheeks. "I do not know," she whispered. "It just happened." "No," I said, my voice cutting clean through the air. "It was built, brick by brick, choice by choice." Ethan turned to her slowly. "You told me you were staying late for work," he said. "You told me I was imagining things." She covered her face. Lucas leaned forward, his voice breaking. "I never meant for it to go this far," he said. "I was lonely. We were distant. I laughed once, not loudly, not cruelly. Lonely people talk," I replied. "They do not build parallel lives." He reached for my hand. I pulled it back. "Do not touch me," I said. "You lost that right months ago." The silence stretched. Then I reached into my purse and placed a thin folder on the table. Lucas recognized it instantly. "What is that?" Sophie asked through tears. "Consequences," I said. I slid the folder toward Lucas. "Copies of your expense reports," I continued. "Internal emails that violate firm policy. Documentation of personal travel disguised as business development. And a memo from an ethics attorney." Lucas stared at the folder as if it might explode. "You contacted my firm?" he asked, his voice barely audible. "I contacted the truth," I replied. "Your firm will do the rest." Ethan inhaled sharply. I turned to him. "I am sorry you had to learn this in public," I said. "But I did not want anyone to lie to you again, not even out of politeness." He nodded once. "I appreciate that," he said quietly. "More than you know." Sophie reached across the table toward him. He stood up immediately. "Do not," he said. That word carried more weight than any scream. Lucas pushed his chair back, panic creeping into his voice. "We can fix this," he said. "Counseling, time. I will cut all contact. I swear." I looked at him carefully. 17 years collapsed into one exhausted man. "You already chose," I said. "I am just accepting it." I reached into my purse again and placed a hotel key on the table. "I will not be coming home tonight," I said. "I will return Monday morning. I suggest you are not there." Lucas stood up abruptly. "You cannot do this," he said. "You are destroying everything." I met his eyes. "No," I said. "I am stopping the destruction." Sophie sobbed openly now. Her mascara streaked down her cheeks. She looked smaller than she had at the table outside, smaller than the fantasy she had lived in. Ethan picked up his jacket. "I will be filing for divorce," he said to her. "Not because of tonight, because of every lie before it." He turned to me. "Thank you," he said again. I stood. The room felt lighter immediately, as if something rotten had finally been removed. I did not wait for Lucas to follow me. I walked out of the private room, through the restaurant, past tables full of people who had no idea a marriage had just ended 3 feet away from their dessert plates. Outside, the air was cold and clean. My hands shook then. Just once. At the hotel across the street, I checked in without emotion. The suite overlooked the city. Lights stretched endlessly below, indifferent to everything that had just happened. I locked the door. I sat on the edge of the bed, and then I cried. Not for Lucas, not for Sophie. I cried for the woman I had been when I believed loyalty was enough to protect love. Later that night, there was a knock. I looked through the peephole. Ethan stood there, coat buttoned, eyes tired. I did not know where else to go, he said quietly when I opened the door. Come in, I replied. We did not touch. We did not comfort each other. We sat in separate chairs and stared out at the city like survivors of the same shipwreck. You were calm, he said after a while. How did you do that? I considered the question. I waited, I said, for the moment when the truth would speak for me. He nodded. That night, when he left for a separate room down the hall, I stood alone at the window. For the first time in years, I was not someone's wife. I was just myself, and the hardest part was already over. The next morning, I woke up before sunrise. The city was still half asleep, wrapped in pale fog and muted headlights. From the window of the hotel suite, Denver looked distant, detached, as if my life had quietly shifted into a different timeline overnight. My phone was already full. Missed calls, voicemails, messages that grew longer and more frantic with each hour. All from Lucas. I did not listen to a single one. Instead, I made coffee in the small kitchenette and opened my laptop. This was the part I understood best. At 8:30 sharp, I forwarded the prepared documentation to 3 recipients: the managing partner at Lucas's firm, the Internal Ethics Committee, and the firm's External Compliance Council. I did not embellish. I did not editorialize. I attached facts, expense reports, email chains, calendar discrepancies, credit card statements, a timeline that told the story clearly enough that no explanation could soften it. By 9:15, my phone rang. The managing partner. Brianna, he said carefully, we received your email. I assumed you would, I replied. There was a pause. This is serious, he continued. We will need to place Lucas on immediate administrative leave while we investigate. I understand, I said. That is appropriate. Another pause. He lowered his voice. You should know, he added. This does not look good for him. I thanked him and ended the call. Lucas tried again. This time I answered. Please, he said immediately. Please, Brianna, you did not have to do this. I closed my eyes. You are right, I said. I did not have to. I chose to. He began to cry, full, uncontrolled sobs. The sound startled me. I had never heard him like that before. They are suspending me, he said. They are talking about termination. That is the result of your choices. I replied evenly. You are ruining my life, he said. I inhaled slowly. No, I said. I am ending a lie that was already destroying my mom. Mine. He begged. He promised. He threatened. None of it mattered. By noon, Sophie had resigned from her position. I did not hear that from Lucas. I heard it from a former student who now worked in the same building. News traveled fast when silence was no longer protecting anyone. She left the city that afternoon. Ethan texted me once. I filed the paperwork. Thank you for standing where I could not. I replied with a single sentence. You did not fail. You were misled. When I returned home Monday morning, Lucas was gone. The house was quiet in a way it had never been before. No tension humming beneath the surface. No unsaid words trapped in the walls. His belongings were still there, but the presence was gone. I packed a single box of his things and placed it by the door. That was all I allowed myself to do. I did not sort through memories. I did not reread old cards. I called my lawyer. We filed for divorce that afternoon. Lucas sent one final email that night, 4 pages long, carefully written, full of insight and regret and self-awareness that came far too late. He said he was finally seeing himself clearly. I did not respond. The firm terminated him 3 weeks later. Officially, it was for cause. Unofficially, everyone understood. He stepped down from the board. His professional reputation collapsed quietly but completely. No dramatic headlines, just doors that stopped opening. That kind of ending is worse. Spring came early that year. Sunlight spilled through the windows of my new apartment, warming the hardwood floors. I had downsized deliberately. Less space, less echo, less room for ghosts. I returned to teaching with a steadiness I had not felt in years. My lectures changed. I spoke less about theory and more about integrity. Students listened differently. One Saturday morning, my phone buzzed while I was making coffee. "Ethan, coffee at Tanner's?" he asked. I smiled before answering. "Give me 15 minutes," I replied. We sat at our usual table by the window, 2 lattes already waiting. "How are you holding up?" I asked. He considered the question. "Better," he said. "Not healed, but honest." I nodded. "That is enough for now." We did not rush anything. We did not pretend this was a love story. It was something quieter. 2 people rebuilding from the same collapse, careful not to repeat what broke us. Months passed. One evening, after a faculty event, I ran into Lucas again. He looked thinner, older, less certain of his place in the room. He approached slowly, as if afraid I might disappear. "I owe you a real apology," he said. I waited. "I lost more than I expected," he continued. "Not just work, not just status. Myself." I met his eyes. "I hope you find peace," I said. "But it will not come from me." He nodded. He understood. As I walked away, I felt no triumph, only closure. That night, Ethan and I stood on my balcony, city lights stretching endlessly beyond us. "I used to think betrayal was the end," I said softly. "And now?" he asked. "Now I think it was the moment I finally chose myself." He took my hand, not tightly, not urgently, just enough. I did not wake up one morning and feel healed. That is the lie people tell when they want grief to fit into a neat timeline. My life did not reset. It recalibrated, slowly, quietly, like a compass forced to point somewhere new after the magnetic north disappears. The divorce was finalized in late summer. No courtroom theatrics, no public screaming, just signatures, stamped documents, and the kind of silence that feels like a door closing for the last time. Lucas did not fight it the way I expected. He tried to bargain at first. He offered counseling again. He offered a fresh start. He offered promises as if promises were not the currency he had already spent on someone else. When he realized I would not bend, he shifted into something I recognized too well: self-preservation. His attorney asked for discretion. His friends asked for privacy. His mother called me and said, "Do you really have to be so harsh?" I did not argue. I just answered the one thing no one wanted to hear. I am not harsh. I am done. The real punishment was not the divorce. It was the aftermath of being exposed as a man who could perform loyalty while living a lie. Lucas had built his entire identity on being respected. Partner, provider, reliable. When that mask cracked, everything slipped underneath it. Old friends stopped inviting him. Colleagues stopped returning calls. People did not need proof beyond the pattern. In certain circles, reputation is not a detail. It is the whole paycheck. I heard through a former neighbor that he moved into a small rental across town. 1 bedroom. No yard. No polished stone entryway. Just a place to exist while he figured out what a man becomes when no one is impressed by him anymore. Sophie was gone like smoke. She had left Denver quickly, the way people do when they realize their choices are louder than their excuses. I never reached out to her. I did not need to. The truth had already delivered its own sentence. Ethan and I did not rush into a romance. We did not fill our empty spaces with each other like temporary furniture. We rebuilt the right way. We met for coffee. We talked about work. We talked about sleep. We talked about the strange feeling of walking into a quiet home and realizing peace can feel unfamiliar at first. Some evenings, we sat on my balcony with takeout containers and watched the lights of the city blink on one by one. No grand declarations, no dramatic vows, just consistency. The thing betrayal taught me was that love is not intensity. Love is stability. Love is what remains when no one is watching. 1 year after that night at Lumiere, I received an invitation I almost declined. A retirement celebration for Professor Martha Benson, my doctoral advisor, held at a downtown hotel ballroom. The kind of event filled with old colleagues, polite laughter, and carefully balanced wine glasses. I went because she mattered. I arrived early in a navy dress and my mother's pearl earrings. I held a small wrapped gift in my hand, the rare book she had once mentioned in passing. The ballroom smelled like roses and expensive perfume. Golden lights reflected off polished floors. People smiled and made small talk in clusters. Then I saw him. Lucas stood near the bar, thinner now, the gray at his temples more noticeable. He still wore a tailored suit. He still stood like a man who wanted the room to approve of him. But something vital was missing. Certainty. When he noticed me, his face tightened. He approached slowly, as if the distance between us carried weight. "Brianna," he said, voice rougher than I remembered. "Lucas," I replied. My tone stayed neutral, because neutrality is what you earn when you no longer fear someone. He looked at me for a long moment, then exhaled. "I owe you an apology," he said. "A real one. I did not invite it. I did not block it. I just waited. I thought losing you would be the worst part," he continued, eyes flicking down to the floor. "But what I really lost was myself. I became someone I do not even recognize." I did not flinch. I did not soften. "You made choices," I said, "and you paid for them." He nodded slowly, like he had rehearsed humility but still did not know how to hold it. "I see that now," he whispered. "And I hope you keep seeing it," I said, "because I will not be the person who carries your guilt for you." His eyes shined, but he did not cry. Pride still lived somewhere inside him. "And you?" he asked. "Are you okay?" I answered without hesitation. "Yes." Not because I needed to prove anything, because it was true. In that moment, the ballroom doors opened again. Ethan walked in, scanning the room until his eyes landed on me. He smiled, and my chest loosened in a way I did not expect. Lucas followed my gaze. Understanding crossed his face, followed by something close to acceptance. "He looks like a good man," Lucas said quietly. "He is," I replied. Ethan came to my side and placed a gentle hand at my back. The gesture was small, but it said everything Lucas never could without performance. We stood there for a brief moment, 3 people connected by one ruined story and 2 new ones. Then I turned away. Not dramatically, not triumphantly, just decisively. Later that night, Ethan and I danced once, slowly, beneath warm lights. No spotlight, no spectacle, just a quiet rhythm and the steady feeling of a hand that did not lie. As we left the hotel, the air outside was cool and clean. I looked up at the sky and realized something that surprised me. I did not hate Lucas. Hate requires attachment. I had moved beyond that. I squeezed Ethan's hand and heard my own voice, calm and certain. I used to think betrayal was the end. Ethan looked at me. "And now?" he asked. "Now I think it was the moment I finally stopped abandoning myself." We walked to the car, not racing toward a fantasy, not running from the past. Just moving forward. Because the truth is this. I did not survive betrayal by becoming harder. I survived by becoming clearer. I learned that forgiveness is optional, but self-respect is not. I learned that love without honesty is just a performance with a high price. And I will never pay that price again. So tell me the truth. If you were in my place, would you have stayed silent to keep the peace? Or would you have done exactly what I did, even if it set your whole life on fire to finally see the light?